Hello, I'm Daniel Rester,
And I'm Luke Carpenter.
and this is Movieholic.
In anticipation of Sherlock Holmes, The Game of Shadows, we're doing a past pick review of Sherlock Holmes.
I have a request. Someone I want to see. Sherlock Holmes. Mr. Holmes, you must widen your gaze. You underestimate the gravity of coming events. Tomorrow, at midday, the world as you know it will end.
Well, there isn't any time to waste then.
Sherlock Holmes stars Robert Downey Jr. as the classic detective created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and Jude Law as his sidekick Dr. John Watson, who is about to get married and retire from his escapades with Holmes. The film begins with Holmes and Watson capturing Lord Blackwood, portrayed by Mark Strong. Lord Blackwood is an aristocratic serial killer and a supposed practitioner of black magic, and is executed shortly after being captured. A few days later, Blackwood seemingly rises from the dead and has plans to threaten all of England. This plot sends the duo through a series of entanglements and mysteries that they must overcome in order to defeat this seemingly immortal villain. So, I really liked Sherlock Holmes at first, and I was going to give it 3 stars, but after going through the plot I realized that it was actually pretty basic and not a lot was happening. It was kind of a mess, and the subplots were underdeveloped, and they seemed like they were just kind of thrown in just so they could set up for the sequel. What really brought the film together, though, and made it just that much better, was the acting of Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. They had great chemistry, and the little exchanges they had between the characters are just, they're witty and they're very clever. Rachel McAdams, she's kind of a supporting character, like an old flame of Sherlock Holmes, and she seemed like she was miscast. And the character was way underdeveloped, and you really know nothing about her through the entire movie. So, for a lot of small reasons like that, I'm just going to give it 2.5 out of 4.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going 2.5 out of 4 stars also. And I still thought this was an entertaining movie. I enjoyed it. I totally agree. Downey Jr. was perfect fit as Sherlock Holmes, and Jude Law, who I think is actually a somewhat underrated actor, was great as Watson as well. Yeah, I think Rachel McAdams was definitely out of place in the movie. She's a good actress, but I felt that she didn't really fit in there. And then Mark Strong as Blackwood was just kind of doing a variation of his performances and like everything else. And my problems with the movie, like you, I was also thinking of 3 stars at first, but then I'm like, this plot sort of went nowhere the entire movie, and you get a ton of, not a ton, but a few subplots in there too that are sort of undercooked, and they're kind of murky. I was confused a little bit about some of them. And then the initial story itself, I felt sort of lacked momentum in the beginning, and then once it picked up later, it sort of got better. But yeah, what did hold it together for me was Downey Jr. and Jude Law, and then some of the other creations that were thrown into the movie as well.
Another thing that I really liked about Sherlock Holmes was the costume design. And it was pretty much perfect. I didn't notice any errors, unlike Gladiator, where they're walking around in blue jeans and wristwatches and neckties, or Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, I'm gonna wear a cowboy hat on a pirate ship.
It's exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. The costume design, the art direction, the set decoration was all great. Just really good production values in this. Some of the editing of the film I thought was kind of choppy, but I felt that these pieces sort of held it together along with the great acting from Downey Jr. and Jude Law. And then also I thought that Hans Zimmer music score was really good and actually kind of subtle compared to some of his other music scores.
Like Inception. I mean, it was just like, oh, Watson, I think we have a problem.
So Sherlock Holmes was directed by Guy Ritchie. He of course gave us Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, and Rock and Rolla, which all have the Ritchie touches to them, of course. He doesn't drop them off in this. You still get the stylish slow motion flourishes and some quick cuts and stuff like that. And Ritchie's a good director. I don't know if he was completely the perfect choice for this material though. He seemed more going for style playing along with the production values than with the classic stories of Doyle. but that could have just been the scriptwriters messing
I
around.
disagree with that a little bit because the story, it did seem classic Sherlock Holmes. You know, he finds the clues and he just kind of remembers them, and then at the very end he reveals how all these things piece together, and that's how he solved the mystery.
Well, I agree with that. That's impressive, and I like that aspect of the movie. But I don't know if it was Ritchie constantly wanting to put style in there to substitute for lack of story, or if the story was too convoluted, or what. But there were such things like in the story, like little mini flashbacks of things that just happened like 5 minutes before that weren't yet revealed, that you didn't even really need in there, that weren't necessary. I like how he uses slow motion sometimes. Not really overused like some people say, but
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
thought it fit well with what was happening, and it seemed like something Sherlock would do. He would think, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do," and then he does it.
I'm not saying that Guy Ritchie's overblowing it. He's not pulling a Michael Bay, except maybe one scene I thought was a little Michael Bay.
That's true.
But he does a good job with some key moments of excitement. For instance, one scene involves a blade and someone chained up. I don't really want to give it away, but it's actually a pretty tense scene, and it was pretty exciting, and he's good at doing that.
So I'm not giving it 3 stars out of 4 because the messy plot and the underdeveloped subplots brings it down. Though the amazing cast and just the great chemistry they have, with the exception of Rachel McAdams, it really brings it up and makes the movie, and it brings it up, but it's just not quite 3 stars. So I'm gonna stick with my 2.5 out of 4.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm sticking with 2.5 also. As you said, some major problems with the story development, and Rachel McAdams was sort of miscast. But the cast was great, some of Guy Ritchie's stylistic flourishes were great, and production values were great. So 2.5 out of 4 for me, and that concludes our review of Sherlock Holmes, and join us soon for our Sherlock Holmes Game of Shadows review.
With the music score by Hans Zimmer.
Watson, what have you done?
Madam, I need you to remain calm. And trust me, I'm a professional. But beneath this pillow lies the key to my release.